Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today we have Shawn Gossman, the creator of the website and YouTube channel Hiking with Shawn, and we're going to learn about some hiking spots within an hour of Carbondale. My name's Jennifer Robertson. I'm the adult program librarian at the Carbondale Public Library. So I just want to welcome you and thank you for coming today. Also, if you have any questions for Shawn that come up during the program, go ahead and use the Q&A or the chat and type those into the Q&A or chat. Shawn has said that he will answer questions after he is done with his presentation. So we will go ahead and welcome Shawn Gossman.
Hello, everyone. Want to thank you for joining in the presentation and listening to what I have to say about hiking here in Southern Illinois. I did actually, as Jennifer was saying, I created my presentation to kind of give you ideas of where you can go hiking and do a couple other little outdoor activities within an hour from Carbondale SIU area. And that way it kind of gives folks around the area to the ability to not have to travel too far. And surprisingly, there's a lot of stuff around Southern Illinois, around about an hour away that you can get to and really enjoy a lot. And a lot of it's probably stuff that you don't even know is there. And some of this is going to be stuff you probably do know is there. So my name is Shawn Gossman. I founded Hiking with Shawn as a way to show family and friends places that I hike at. It turned into something else and became like a local celebrity type thing. I'll be in stores and people will recognize me and they'll be like, Shawn, I watch your videos. I have no idea who they are. So it's turned into something bigger. And now I'm involved in nonprofits. I work with subcommittees with the Forest Service. I've been on the news and so on and so forth. My videos mainly focus on hiking, cycling, and other outdoor recreation stuff around the Shawnee National Forest and our state parks. You can learn more about what I do on my YouTube. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr. And I have a website, hikingwithshawn.com. And you can get on there. You can see more of my videos I put out. I also write free trail guides that are 100% free. So in this presentation, we'll go over some really good spots, and I hope you enjoy it. You could do the next slide. So before you go, I definitely want to give you some tips for safety and just to ensure that you have an enjoyable time when you're out there. First and foremost, always tell someone where you're going before you go. Try to give them as much detail as possible. If something was to happen to you and you didn't return, that information is going to help search and rescue efforts. I always try to say this, always watch your step and put safety first. Watching your step is really the one full effective way you can prevent any sort of safety hazard while enjoying nature. Just watching your step. So safety before selfies. Bring plenty of water and food. That's been a big problem. People don't bring enough water and food. They think it's an easy hike, and it turns out that we have rolling hills and rugged conditions, and you need to make sure you stay hydrated and fueled. I also have a link on there, sihike.com/gear, and that will take you to an article I written with gear suggestions that I personally use. You can download a good map app such as Avenza. Always bring a compass with you. One thing I try to tell people is right before you leave where you park your vehicle or where you get dropped off, take a compass reading that direction. That way, if you do get lost, you can point to that direction and you know which way to go. It's a pretty simple way to get back home. Avenza is available for iPhone and Android, and it's free. You can get the River to River Trail bundle, and there's also a multi-day hiking app bundle. It's $10 for 6 maps. It's well worth it, and it supports the River to River Trail Society. Make sure you check the weather, dress appropriate for it. Most areas do not have cell phone reception. Please keep that in mind. Never trespass, always respect the property rights of others, and always pack out what you pack in. Leave no trace. And if you make a fire in an area where you can make fires, please make sure they're cold to touch before you leave. But leave no trace. We got to keep the forest clean for everyone to enjoy. Go to the next slide. All right, the first place I want to talk about is Giant City State Park. I live right now in Metropolis area, but I grew up in Hearst, which is Williamson County. So I kind of grew up in Giant City State Park. As you could see on the slide, that's a Devil's Stand Table formation. And that's one of the more popular trails in the park. And I enjoy Giant City a lot. I have many memories there. I use it to go bicycling and hiking and camping and all sorts of stuff. You go to the next slide. So Giant City State Park is about 10 miles from the Carbondale area. If most of you haven't been there, I do recommend you go. Many people have visited without knowing all the different trails it provides. The common ones are like the nature trail with all the carvings and the streets, Fat Man Squeeze, they call it. They got Trillium Trail, which is their nature preserve. Stone Fort has the Native American stone fort on it, and then the stand table, which I just showed. The Post Oak Trail, which is above the stand table trail, recently got some upgrades, maybe about a year ago, and they provide a forest therapy experience. So you just walk the trail and there's signs that tell you to breathe deep and so on and so forth. But it's also ADA compliant for a large portion of it. So those of you who are handicapped and can't get out have a chance to get out and enjoy nature too. I really appreciate and respect Giant City for doing that. So my favorite trail at Giant City State Park is the Red Cedar. It's a 12-mile loop, has a primitive campground in the middle. You can check in with the visitor center and get a camping permit, and you can camp. And I've done it a few times. I've done it with my girlfriend. It's a really fun trail. It's more of the wild side of Giant City. It's very wilderness-like, and there's just a lot to see. So you can move to the next slide. And here's another photo. This is on Red Cedar Trail, and it's just a field of flowers that they planted for pollinators, butterflies and hummingbirds and all that. Next slide. Panther Den Wilderness. This is one of my favorite areas. It's really close to Giant City, and the photo you're seeing there is the main rock formations. So you'd go past the big square looking bluff on your left, and the Panther's Den is right on the other side of it. You can go to the next slide. This is the smallest wilderness in the Shawnee National Forest inventory. It is 16 miles from Carbondale. It allows hikes in more rugged backcountry situations, with still being pretty close to the city. Panther Den is a wilderness, so it's important that you do understand that. Bring plenty of water, food. Try to download the Avenza app or get a map. A lot of people have issues getting lost out there, but it is a wilderness and it connects to Crab Orchard, so there's even more public land. There's a lot of rock formations to see. It's really cool. And if you go during the spring, and there's a lot of flora, a lot of wildflowers, and it's really pretty. But I did put on the bottom, don't worry, there are no panthers. So that's like an urban myth of Southern Illinois that we have cougars and bears and wolves and all that. And don't worry, we don't. Not yet, at least. You can move to the next slide. And that is the top of Panther Den Wilderness, that first image that I showed you. And it's really cool. It almost reminds me of a castle, like you're in a castle, you know, a medieval environment. So that's Southern Illinois. It's really fun to show these pictures to folks who are not from the area, because we could say, yeah, this is over here. Illinois is pretty cool. So Southern Illinois. You can move to the next. All right, we got Little Grand Canyon. If you've never been here, it's a really fun place to go. This is one of the photos. It is a system of waterfalls that you hike down. And when it's really wet, it's a really fun place to see, but you really have to use a lot of caution. So that's one of the photos of the waterfall, which you will essentially hike down. You can go next slide. So Little Grand Canyon is 12 miles from SIU Carbondale area. It's an experience I recommend to everyone. If you get to the top where you park, there in the middle, you'll see some concrete slabs. Fire tower used to be at that point. So that's kind of neat. We don't have many fire towers left, and only one that you could really go on, which is a Trig Tower. I really wish they would have kept some of them. I think a fire tower there would have been really, really awesome. But like I say, please use extreme caution if you go to Little Grand Canyon, especially when it's wet. A lot of the rocks you climb on will be wet and pretty slippery. Aside from the waterfalls, you can see some awesome bluffs, or as I like to call them, bluffage, if you follow me. There's some really pretty scenic overlooks on the trail, and it's a loop and it's hilly. So do be prepared for that. Bring plenty to drink, some snacks for some fuel, and there's some benches and places you could sit down. During the summer months, there is snakes, so keep that in mind. Next slide. And this is another cool little area at Little Grand Canyon, and it's a natural window, and you'll find them kind of all over the place out there, and little holes and voids and cave shelters and all that. So it's a really cool area. Go next slide. And there's, okay, LaRue Pine Hills, Snake Road. This is one of my favorite areas. The image you're seeing right there is a timber rattlesnake. A lot of people don't know we have rattlesnakes in Southern Illinois. We do. He's one of 3 venomous snakes. We have the timber, we have the cottonmouth, which is commonly called a water moccasin, and we have a copperhead. If you like snakes, you like reptiles, you like amphibians, I highly recommend Snake Road. If you like birding, if you like wildflowers, I highly recommend Snake Road. But you will see a lot more snakes in this area than you will see anywhere else, I've noticed. And a lot of them are going to be cottonmouth. But occasionally you see snakes like this, which a lot of us who watch snakes, this is kind of a prized sight for us to see. And that was a really good one. That was an older rattlesnake. You go to the next slide. So Snake Road is 21 miles from the Carbondale area. And like I said, this forest road isn't for everyone. Some people do not like snakes. They don't want to be around them. The road closes 2 times a year. It is closed right now as we speak. Foot traffic is welcome. No bicycles, no motor vehicles. Definitely want to stay on the road, and during more warmer sunny days is when you're going to see the most wildlife migration. So right now they're migrating from the bluffs to the swamps, and you can see all sorts of snakes. In the spring, right now, bluffs to the swamps, and in the fall, when the road closes again, they'll go from the swamps back into the bluffs to do their little hibernation. You go to the next slide. This is a cottonmouth. This is the most common snake you will see at LaRue Pine Hill Snake Road. It is venomous. It is popular to open its mouth and gape at you. Has a white mouth. They don't chase you. They don't want to bite you, but that is to say, don't handle them. Don't bring snake hooks. Don't harass them. All that's illegal. They're pretty protected. So go to the next slide. Piney Creek Ravine. Piney Creek Ravine is one of these hidden gems that a lot of people don't know about in Southern Illinois. It's on the west side, not too far from Snake Road, Murfreesboro area. The photo you're seeing right there is Native American rock art. So Piney Creek Ravine is the largest area in Illinois that has the most Native American rock art in a public land setting. It dates back to the Mississippian periods and the late, roughly. So you can move on, next slide. 34 miles from the Carbondale area. It's truly a hidden gem because it's a little tiny tract of state managed land, just completely surrounded by Amish country. So if you don't know what Piney Creek Ravine is, you will probably never even go to it. If you haven't been, I do highly recommend seeing it. As I said, you want to see the rock art. It's starting to fade away. There's a lot of modern vandalism to the point to where they had to put up a security camera. And I have a feeling that within a couple of decades, that art probably isn't going to really be visible anymore. So definitely go see it, take your family, go see it, and just see some history of, kind of the first people. And here's a secret: go when wet if you want to see a lot of waterfalls, but you will have to cross a creek. And the last time we went, it was kind of cold. We took our shoes and socks off and crossed the creek. We do that all the time. And it's worth it. In the end, you see some pretty cool waterfalls. Go to the next slide. This is some of the rock art. I think what we're looking at there is modern, as in not Native American. But I'm not too sure. It may be native and just colored in. I know it's been colored in at least, but there's all sorts of different rock art from the Native Americans to the 40s and the 50s and even modern stuff. It's definitely worth checking out though. Next slide. Rocky Bluff Trail. This is really close to Carbondale. I guess technically it is a Carbondale address. If you've never been, definitely go check it out. We went the other day. It was the first time we actually went, and we hiked the Rocky Bluff Trail and did the Wild Turkey Trail, and it was a pretty good time. The photo here shows the waterfall. It's dry. I've not yet made it there when the waterfall is wet. You go next slide. So it is 11 miles from Carbondale. It's a beautiful loop trail and best seen after a good rain. Aside from the waterfall, there's really pretty creeks, interesting rock formations, and of course, a beautiful forest. I'm glad I wrote this down. The area does require a vehicle permit. You can go to the visitor center on 148 for Crab Orchard, and you can buy a day pass or an annual pass. I recommend the annual pass. That way you can visit again and again, and definitely do that. You don't want to get a fine or anything. It is heavily patrolled. Next slide. Here's one of the creeks. It was a really pretty area when we went, and quite a bit followed the creeks, and there's nice cave shelters and all sorts of banding in the bluffs. So it was definitely a really interesting area for sure. Next slide. Tunnel Hill State Trail. This is the trail that started everything for me. Back in 2012, before I got into the outdoors, I was in bad shape, health-wise, just making poor decisions. And I got a bicycle, started riding, and I rode this trail and fell in love with the outdoors and eventually started hiking. So this is kind of my baby of a trail, if that makes any sense. This is the inside of the tunnel. It is probably about 500 foot, a little over 500 foot in length. It used to be longer until they had a collapse back when it was a railroad. You can get to this tunnel pretty easily, but I recommend if you're into cycling, you can start at Vienna and go to Tunnel Hill and back, which is about a 20-mile round trip. You go to the next slide. So it's 37 miles from the Carbondale area. Definitely bring a bike if you get into cycling. It's safe. There's no vehicles. It's bicycle or foot traffic only. Horses are not allowed on the trail. They can cross at one point, but they're not allowed to ride on it. So it's a really smooth trail. There's a lot of interesting trestles you cross. And the one in between Vienna and Tunnel Hill has Breeden Trestle. It's the longest trestle in the whole trail system, and it's really neat. It has little observation decks and all that. And definitely want to check out the tunnel. And there's all sorts of creeks. There's a general store where you can go buy snacks. You can go through ghost towns, real ghost towns. And if you just want to see the tunnel and you don't want to do all the long biking, you can go to the village of Tunnel Hill, and it's about a quick 5-minute walk. And I also want to throw a shout out to Shawnee Hills e-bikes out of, I believe he's in Anna or Jonesboro, and he rents e-bikes out. So you can get an e-bike and you can ride the trail. That way you don't have to do a lot of pedaling if you don't get into that. Personally, I like to ride my mountain bike though. Next slide. Here's a photo of the Breeden Trestle. And you can see it's really pretty in the fall. There's a lot of good, fall colors out there. And that's all the original trestle underneath it. So it was built in the 1800s, so it's pretty old. It's a pretty neat experience for sure. And the whole trail itself, if you want to do that, is about 47 miles long. Starts at Harrisburg and ends at Karnak and goes to the wetland center. So it's a really cool place to go. Next slide. Heron Pond. This is actually the first trail I hiked, and I found it on Tunnel Hill Trail. I went from Vienna to Karnak on the Tunnel Hill Trail, and I seen a sign that said Heron Pond. And at first I thought it was something to do with fishing, so I never really went to it. And I think I may have got on the internet and they said there's a hiking trail. So I rode my bike to it and I hiked it and found this beautiful boardwalk. And you just walk right on the swamp. And I mean, this trail from the trailhead is maybe 1.5 miles to the boardwalk. And it's just, you can see all sorts of birds and really cool wildlife, snakes, frogs, salamanders, and there's some pretty big trees out there to see too. It's a really neat area. Next slide. So it's 44 miles from SIU. Heron Pond shows viewers so this part of Southern Illinois is what Heron Pond looked like at one time. The whole Cache River Basin, you can kind of see what it all looked like before we came in and timbered everything and, modernized the land. So it's a swamp. They're really putting a lot of money into it, trying to keep the water in the pond. And, it includes huge cypress trees within the area of the swamp and just the general areas around the cache. There's a really large oak tree that you can find a picture of me somewhere giving it a hug. There's a lot of old settlement. And of course, you can see the Cache River. And you can walk, and I put this on the bottom. If you go during the warmer months, bring a lot of bug spray. There's a lot of mosquitoes. Mosquitoes just love the swamp. and it almost feels like they're going to pick you up and carry you off. So bring a lot of bug spray. Next slide. And here's the giant champion cherry bark oak. I couldn't find the pit in it, but when I was looking at it, I wasn't even a quarter around the tree. So it's a really big tree. And it's while it's still alive, it's showing signs of damage. So it's like one of them things you really want to kind of see now if you've never seen it. Next slide. Jackson Falls. Jackson Falls is a really cool area over by Ozark, Illinois. And it's filled with waterfalls and all sorts of different things. This is the main feature, the waterfall. And usually when I go visit there, the water is always falling. Even on our driest days, it's at least trickling. Next slide. So it's 43 miles from SIU Carbondale area. Jackson Fall is world famous. I say that because I've met climbers there from all over the world. I've met climbers from the UK, Sweden, Japan, all sorts of places. A lot of people come there to boulder, to climb, to rappel. The Illinois Climbers Association and Beta Fund has helped maintain it for that. It's an official area you can climb in. It's legal. And it's a fun area. So if you like waterfalls, you like climbing, you like bluffs, all sorts of rock formations, Jackson Falls is really cool. And they just put up a new map at the trailhead, and it kind of explains more where to go and how to get down. It's really good. So they're doing a lot of improvements out there, I've noticed. So definitely check out Jackson Falls if you've never been there. Next slide. Here's some of the bluffs at Jackson Falls. You can't really see it, but on these bluffs, they have the, I'm not a climber, so I'm unsure of the name, but just the paraphernalia they use to climb up and hook the ropes up and everything. Next slide. Ferncliff State Park. This is somewhere we go quite often when we don't have a whole lot of time. We were there last night, and the waterfall pretty much looked like that. That's the main waterfall, the Big Rocky Hollow Trail. A lot of people go to that. You've probably seen it all over the internet. It's a good one to go to when it's really cold because it'll freeze. And when my dad was a kid, he said they used to get on the top and they'd slide down and grab a bar and sling themselves over before they went off the top. Nowadays, they don't want you to get on the top, and it's understandable because people have, had fatal falls. So, but I guess they're a little bit crazier back in the day. You can go to the next slide. So it's 24 miles from SIU Carbondale area. It's a great destination. River to river trail runs through it. There's all sorts of different trails. Besides the main ones, I recommend Happy Hollow is a really good trail. And then Blackjack Oak is a really good trail. So look those up before you go. I didn't provide a link on there. I meant to, but you could just type in Ferncliff State Park on Google or whatever search browser you use, and you'll find a link, and you should find a map. So Happy Hollow is a fun little trail. It's 5 to 8 miles long, depending on what trails you take. There's a natural arch on it and all sorts of cool seeds. And they have multiple camping options. You can RV camp, you can tent camp, you can backpack camp, and you can also camp with a horse or a mule. Next slide. And this is Redmond Trail. That particular bluff is one of the official areas you can rock climb and boulder on. So Ferncliff has a few of them. They have this one, and then they have a remote site, Cedar Bluff, I believe. Next slide. So that's pretty much the end of my presentation. And I hope you have enjoyed the places I've kind of given out. And feel free to ask questions. More of my links are right here. Like I said, I have a website, You can find all sorts of guides and stuff like that on. My YouTube is my main feature. I have over 600 videos of all sorts of places all over Southern Illinois, whether you want an easy hike or a harder hike. And I provide maps and everything and the links. And you can just check out all the links and feel free to ask questions.
So it looks like there were a couple of questions that came in while you were talking. So first of all, if anybody else has questions, go ahead and put them in the chat or the Q&A. Is there primitive camping allowed in the Little Grand Canyon?
So Little Grand Canyon is a recreational area. So no, you can only use that for a day site only.
Okay. Where is the best place to see turtles?
Turtles? I've seen a lot of turtles in the Giant City area, especially on Red Cedar Trail. More of the wilder trails that are less used. I've noticed you can find quite a bit at Heron Pond, and anywhere with a good creek, you'll see turtles on logs and whatnot.
Great, thank you. Okay, this seems like more of a comment perhaps. I forgot where Fat Man Squeeze was. I went there in the 80s. I believe that's referring to Giant City Park. So maybe could you just talk about where it is in the park?
I'm glad that was brought up. So you take the nature trail and you go to where they call Giant City Streets, and it's where all the rock carvings are from the 1800s and the CCC and all that, and it looks like streets. And in the corner, there's a sign that it may say Nature Trail or something like that, but there's a slit in the corner and you can see daylight. But one thing a lot of people don't know, and I don't mind sharing, is especially during this particular time of the year, and then in the fall, a lot of copperheads migrate in there. So keep that in mind. They usually close it, put some tape or caution tape around it.
That is good to know. Thank you. This person says they are interested in Inspiration Point. Can you give a review?
Yeah, Inspiration Point's really nice. It's near Snake Road. If you take Route 3 south and you turn on Muddy Levee Road, go all the way to the end, to go to Snake Road, you take a right. If you take a left and then go down to your first right, that'll take you up to the trailhead for Inspiration Point. It is a beautiful place to go. Probably one of the highest overlooks in the Shawnee, and you could just see the whole Mississippi River, Big Muddy Basin. And it's really pretty. I definitely recommend it. It's a little steep getting down to it. Definitely be careful, but it's worth seeing for sure.
Great, thank you. So these two questions might go together a little bit. What site would you recommend for a day hike with young children? And besides Giant City Park, where are some areas that might be okay for people who have some problems walking but still think they can hike? So maybe easier trails, probably not Inspiration Point.
Yeah, Inspiration Point would be kind of harder for young kids and harder for those who have mobility issues. Aside from the state parks, which really kind of provide a great area for, folks with little kids and mobility issues, definitely go check out the Lower Cache. You can go to the Lower Cache. They have a boardwalk trail, Section 8 Woods on Highway 37 is really nice. It's a nice boardwalk trail. And for those with little kids, I really highly recommend Millstone Bluff. It's a fun little loop, and there's all sorts of signs from the past, Native American burial sites, Native American rock art, and there's signage provided everywhere where folks can, read it, or their kids can read it and learn more about the area. So I definitely recommend that.
Great, thank you. I've noticed, this is a question for me, you have a lot of like trash collection, conservation efforts going on. Like if people were wanting to get involved in stuff like that, what would your advice be for them?
Well, the main thing is what I try to recommend people do the most is, when you go hiking, bring a trash bag with you and a good pair of gloves. And if you see trash, pick it up and, throw it away. If you can leave an area and make it look a little cleaner, the more power to you. As far as more organized efforts, pay attention to a website called Friends of the Shawnee National Forest, as well as the River to River Trail Society. And both of these organizations, which I'm a board member of, just for some transparency, we do a lot of trash blasts, and we partner up with the Forest Service and other organizations, and we really make a nice little impact on the forest. The Illinois Extension U of I recently partnered with the Friends of Shawnee and pulled out 240 pounds of trash from Dutchman Lake. They weighed it, and it's a big deal. So if anyone is interested in picking up trash, do reach out, and feel free to do it on your own. And if you do, take a picture of it and share it on social media. Encourage others to do it.
That's a great idea. We had a comment that says there's no sign on Fat Man's Squeeze, but that the visitor center advises not to go into the crevice.
Yeah, I wouldn't go into it. I mean, people have been stuck. They've had to have search or rescue services come out and get them out. It's not easy to get through. And migrating venomous snakes are in the area.
Yikes. Okay. This person says, we noticed a no e-bike sign in Vienna on the Tunnel Hill Trail. Is this no longer accurate? It is sad to keep any cyclists from enjoying.
As far as I know, there's been new legislation or new rules put up for Tunnel Hill to allow for e-bikes. I know Shawnee Hills e-bikes is there all the time with his trailer while DNR people are working, and a lot of people use it. I think it's an older sign that just hasn't really been updated. It's one of them skinny, kind of natural area looking ones. I know what they're talking about, but as far as I know, you can always also call Tunnel Hill or Ferne Clyffe. I believe they're the ones over Tunnel Hill, and you can ask them. But as far as I know, you can use an e-bike.
Great, thank you. Would you ever consider private tours?
I'm actually looking into that right now. It's been kind of a process. There's an insurance requirement with the Forest Service, but I'm definitely looking into that. And you can pay attention to hikingwithshawn.com as well as my social for updates on that. I hope to eventually get that started, maybe by the end of this year. I'm kind of waiting around to see what happens with COVID. That's kind of threw a wrench in a lot of stuff, but it's definitely something I do want to do. I get a lot of requests. So
great, that sounds fantastic. Are there hiking trails at Dixon Springs?
Yeah, there's a few. There's the one we go to the most is Ghost Dance Canyon. So if you park at the main parking area where the swimming pool is, there's a gate there, and you just go past that gate and you'll walk down a trail and you'll go underneath the highway bridge and you'll keep going. You have to essentially cross a creek, so you might get wet. You want to dress appropriately for that. But that's one of the coolest waterfalls in the area. So if you've never been, definitely check that out. And you can get on all trails, and you can see the other trails around Dixon Springs as well.
Thank you. Can you repeat the name of the hiking part that's great for kids? I think there was a couple that you mentioned, but maybe the cache. I'm not
yeah,
sure.
the lower cache, and that's near Cypress, Illinois. You can just type in lower cache, Cypress, Illinois, and Google, and it should give you information, directions. I believe it's part of the Cypress Creek National Wildlife Refuge. I could be wrong, but I do believe that particular part of cache is part of that acting agency. That's also where you would launch canoes. It's a calmer water versus other parts of the cache. So that'd be another good, if you want to take your kid on a canoe or kayaking trip, that'd be the place I'd recommend. And there's a fairly large tree. I believe it's the largest cypress tree in Illinois that's there. It's in the water. So, and the other one was Millstone Bluff, and that's over by Simpson, Illinois.
Great. Thank you so much. It looks like that is all the questions that we had. So once again, just thank you for coming and sharing this information with us. Everyone, don't forget to all of Shawn's information is on this slide right here, his website and YouTube and Facebook. So go ahead and follow him because he has a lot of great places to go. And thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.